Welcome back, everybody. I am super excited to be here today with Kalyan Rallabandi, and he's here on behalf of his co-authors, Zack, Bhan, and Seoungwoo Lee. And we're talking about their recent paper, which is actually a TVision dataset one, which is called The Impact of Ad Repetition on Viewer Attention in Connected and Linear Television. So, a very topical and important paper, leveraging into industry data. So, thank you so much for being on, Kalyan.
Thank you so much, Colin, for inviting us and giving us an opportunity to share more about our paper.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So to start us off, because it's so recent, just came out in the June 2026 issue of JAR. For people who may not have seen the article yet, could you tell us a bit about what you investigate and how you go through and take a look at that? Yeah.
Sure, sure. So in this particular paper, we looked at something that advertisers tend to do all the time. They tend to show the same ad to the same viewer multiple times. So this ad repetition, we wanted to understand what the impact of this repetition is on the consumer's attention. A follow-up question in this regard is, does this impact on the consumer attention differ whether the consumer is consuming the content on connected television? Connected television is when I watch content on my smart TV, when I watch streaming content, such as watching Netflix, Hulu, Disney Plus on my smart television, or does the consumer attention to ad repetition get impacted whether they're watching it on connected television A versus linear television when you're watching the more standard cable or the satellite television? So we got an opportunity to work with wonderful data, thanks in a big part to the JAR-TVision data release call. So this is a very rich data set that TVision Insights provided us. What we have is essentially almost a second by second attention tracking of consumers. So it's not a survey data, it is observational data where the panel has agreed to have a webcam installed in their living room when they are watching the television content. Along with that, we also have the automatic content recognition ACR data from the television to see which program and which advertisement, for example, is being viewed by the consumer. So whether the consumers are paying attention to the television and what content is being relayed on the television. So we have this rich data, and what we primarily find is that the consumer's attention falls with repetition, which is not really surprising. It falls both on linear television as well as on connected television. But it tends to decline noticeably faster on connected television vis-a-vis the linear television. So repetition gives decline in consumer attention. It falls down and it plateaus for linear television, but for connected television, the decline is steeper. The second thing we find is that depending on a narrow, let's say we are talking about a narrow interval, a 1 hour window, or maybe even a 1 day window, wherein the ads are repeated. So even within this narrow window, it's not surprising that the attention will decline. But again, this decline is steeper in the case of connected television vis-a-vis linear television. So these are our key findings.
That's really interesting. Yeah. I think, yeah, a couple of things I want to pick up on. You had a lot to communicate there, which was awesome. Is definitely a shout out as well too to TVision, and it was fantastic that they shared this data. It really
Yeah.
is amazing data, like you mentioned, that they're collecting and that this database they have, and it's really kind of them to share it with academics so we can go through and take a look at it. And I totally as well too see this phenomenon happening, and I feel like it's an interesting kind of double whammy because I feel like the ad repetition is actually higher on connected TV, for at least from my perspective, than linear TV. And it's interesting that you say it's even more damaging in that particular context.
Right. That is so true. And in fact, this is essentially the key takeaway for practitioners over here, that as uh, as a practitioner, the most common instinct is that because the consumer's engagement uh, is higher on connected television vis-a-vis linear television, let's show more advertisements on connected television, which interestingly gives rise to this particular phenomenon. So it's actually working against you if you're a practitioner who believes that showing more ads on CTV or showing ads with greater repetition on CTV will help you. It's actually working against you.
That's interesting. So yeah, you're right. I guess the implications are very clear in some ways for advertisers to reduce that frequency so they don't have the same repetition happening. Would you say then, based on your data, that it's worthwhile probably having less precise targeting at the expense of reducing the or at the benefit of reducing the repetition? Because I think in some cases it seems like we're getting these really precise targeting data sets that are leading to the same person getting 25 of the same ads in a row. But
Yeah.
would your guess then be that it's better to kind of relax that and it's better to have an imperfectly targeted ad, but less of them or less of the same one? Yeah.
So that's a great follow-up question, Colin. So one is the fact that the repeating on CTV is hurting you, but there is also this particular aspect of about the ecosystem. The fact is that you have the advertisers, the agencies, and the ad tech platforms, and there is not a lot of there is not a lot of coordination in terms of the frequency capping, the cross application tracking right now. So this is one of the big reasons why the CTV ad repetition hackers happens. So you have most of these platforms like Netflix, for example, it's a walled garden. Really, you can't have much say in terms of, what, I would like my ad to be shown once right now and then once maybe 5 hours down the line. You really don't have much control if you are an
Huh.
agency. So that's actually one big issue that most of these agencies are facing. So there is something about the environment, the ecosystem itself, that nobody's really able to control what the viewer sees, when the viewer sees. So there is that aspect also that to be honest, needs to be explored from the industry perspective.
Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah, because like I honestly have never looked at the targeting platforms for connected TV. I assume they were similar to like Meta or like the other social media ones where there are those frequency caps, but that's kind of interesting if they don't actually have those. Hmm.
So these ad agencies, they don't get to say a lot because of the walled garden nature of many of these major streaming platforms. A follow-up would essentially also be, maybe considering attention-based pricing, given, what our results are showing that at the beginning, the ad gets a lot of attention, but as you tend to repeat the fifth repetition, sixth repetition, consumer attention is going to go down. So maybe it would be a fair thing to say that attention-based pricing could probably be a natural part of this particular system.
Yeah, that makes sense, right? I mean, they shouldn't be paying the same because they're getting less effect, right? Um,
Yeah.
I'm guessing as well too, and this is kind of like an extrapolation because I know it goes beyond the data that you had access to. But I'm wondering why did you and your co-authors hypothesize, or what do you think was driving the fact that you're seeing this drop off in connected TV versus linear TV? And again, I know you didn't have direct access to the data probably to explain this, but what do you think might be causing that? Yeah.
So I think the fact is that we have greater engagement on connected television. Consumers have a lot more freedom, lot more control. I think something about that setup is essentially giving rise to this particular is giving rise to this particular result that we are seeing primarily.
Makes sense, right? I mean, I guess it's sort of an extension of like the internet versus like TV, right? It's much more lean in, right? People are more
Yeah.
engaged, they're more disrupted by ads, right? So it makes sense. Yeah. Okay, so lots of implications to think about in terms of advertisers. I'm curious as well too, where did the idea come from this? Like, how
So
did
that's
you?
that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. It came really from the advertising industry itself. There is a greater emphasis on connected television advertising. There is essentially a report out there, in fact, multiple reports out there, which say that the ad spend on CTV advertising vis-a-vis LTV advertising, it is set to overtake it in the next few years. So maybe 2028 is essentially the date that I saw in one of the reports. So, given the emphasis that we have on CTV advertising, and what the industry literature, the trade press, ad age articles, Wall Street Journal articles, they have been coming up with these articles which say that the ad repetition, the frequency of the ad repetition is causing the viewers a lot of frustration, and they're getting fatigued by seeing these ads so many times. So this is one of the reasons why we wanted to study this. So when we looked at the academic literature on consumer attention, we saw that the focus was primarily on linear television. To the best of our knowledge, there has been no comparison on CTV versus LTV in academic literature,
Mm.
be it any field, be it marketing, be it computer science, be it any field. There hasn't been a direct comparison of sorts, and coupled with the fact that CTV is gaining more and more prominence in terms of firms, advertisers diverting their ad dollars to CTV. We thought this is a question worth exploring and studying further.
I totally agree as well too. And I think that it's, we're definitely seeing this as the future. Like everything eventually is going to be connected when it comes to TV and other ads, right? And it is weird. I've noticed it as well. I thought it was just me, so it's cool that you have data on this, right?
Yeah.
That we're all seeing the same ad over and over again. My favorite is when I get ads for universities. They're like, "Go get an MBA and make something of your career." I'm like, okay. It's just
Yeah,
interesting,
I
right?
mean, there is also this particular phenomenon which is taking place across, the cord cutting phenomenon. Gen Z, it's really hard to access them. I think all of these factors are essentially giving rise to the prominence of CTV in general. And I think it is not surprising, therefore, to see that more and more advertisers are pushing their ad dollars, and to be having access to this kind of data, given what's going on in the broader economy. We felt really, really fortunate to be working with this. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah. To go a little bit on the darker side, I'm just thinking about, I want to ask about any challenges you might have encountered. And I think I like to bring this up just because of the fact that I feel like often when we see the beautiful paper in press, or the article that's comes out in print, we don't see some of these challenges that we face. And I really want to bring this up just for junior researchers, especially so they can realize that there is often a lot of struggle that goes into papers. So I'm curious, were there any in your particular article? And if so, like, how did you overcome those? Yeah.
So we did face the biggest issue that we faced was endogeneity issue. And I'll be really honest with you, the first set of results that we got were exactly opposite, very, very
Oh, wow.
so
Yeah.
what we saw was that as ads get repeated more and more, consumer attention tends to go up higher and higher. And the reason that for that is selection, right? So firms tend to show ads to those users who are more likely to see them. So if we don't control for those, what we see is essentially this. That is the biggest issue that we saw. So the way we tackle that is having so many fixed effects, we got in viewer fixed effects, very, very granular fixed effects. And that's the richness of the data, really, more than our own anything that we did. The data allowed us to do this. We could include viewer fixed effects, we could include ad fixed effects, we could include viewer by ad fixed effects, we included viewer by ad by the time frame fixed effects.
Oh, wow.
So
Yeah.
having a second by second information on about 1,000 users for about a year, it allowed us to do this. So we were able to control for that endogeneity. And what we saw was that this pattern, it reversed itself so beautifully. So where we saw with repetition, attention was increasing after having all these fixed effects, we could actually see the real pattern emerging.
That's amazing. Yeah. No, modeling is quite cool. I'm always impressed by modelers. So well done. Yeah.
Thank you.
And in terms of where to next, this is sort of the other big question is like what are some other avenues that people might explore to follow up on this, or ones you might be potentially looking at as well too? I don't know. It's a really rich data set, and maybe there's other things people could take a look at to follow up on what your results are. Yeah.
Right. So that's a very good question, because we felt even when we were working, there are so many things that we could be doing with this data, maybe combining it with data on the consumers' purchases, whether they are actually able to the outcomes in terms of their consideration sets or their purchases. If we could actually combine this particular data with that, then we would be able to model how the ad repetition is impacting metrics that, say, a marketing manager would like to track. How is the ad impacting ultimately my sales? The other thing that we wanted to be able to do, which unfortunately at this point of time we found ourselves not able to do, is if we could track the consumer the first time the consumer was exposed to any advertisement and see the cycle of this particular ads, and which we are able to do for some consumers but not all the consumers. Even with this particular data, the first time an ad was exposed to when a consumer was exposed to an ad, and see how the consumer's attention plays along. Right now, given the way we have done this is actually a linear exploration. But if we could model from the first time the consumer is exposed through all the subsequent exposures, we would be able to model for the dynamics, the where in and the where out. There must be a sweet spot somewhere in terms
Yeah.
of the ad repetition. We would be able to identify that. We did not explore that, and I think that is something worth probably also taking a look at, because then the practitioners would know what exactly is a good number of ads depending on the type of consumers we have, and maybe plan accordingly.
Yeah, that would be quite cool to see like what that optimum point is as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was interesting because your study, like I take a look at a lot of stuff around Gen AI and creative, and it made me and I always wonder when watching TV, why don't they just vary the ad a little bit? And I wonder like maybe stuff like Gen AI could be used to create slightly different versions of the ad, if that would kind of
Mhm.
help boost attention over time. Even if I'm going to be forced to see the same ad 20 times, at least give me like five different versions of the same ad, might make it more interesting as well. Yeah.
It's interesting you say this, because I don't know if I should be sharing this
You
in
don't
the
have to if you don't want to,
podcast.
if you're working on it, but
Because we are working on something very, very similar. So you'll probably hear back from us very soon about
oh,
something,
I'm
something very
excited.
similar.
Yeah, that's very cool. Yeah, excellent. Yeah. Well, on that note, we'll leave the veil of secrecy on your future research, and hopefully we'll get that coming into JAR soon, as well as any other follow-ups you might have on the awesome TVision data set.
Thank you so much, Colin, for having us and giving us an opportunity to share more about our paper once again. Thank you.
No, of course. Yeah, thanks so much. So again, thank you, Kalyan. And for those who are interested, it's called The Impact of Ad Repetition on Viewer Attention in Connected and Linear TV. And this is in the June 2026 issue of JAR. So thanks again, Kalyan.
Thank you, Colin.